All right, so this is chapter 1 of Anatomy and Physiology and its introduction to many terms. The first objective is to explain the difference between anatomy and physiology and then also to explain how they are related. In terms of key terms, we have anatomy, which deals with structure or also known as morphology of body parts. And so this would be how they look, as well as how they are organized. The next term is physiology, and it is concerned with the function. And so, in anatomy and physiology, the structure or morphology of a body part has to do with the function that it has to perform. Next, we have gross anatomy, which would be structures without having to use microscope. And in histology or microscopic anatomy, it says it in the name, you need to use a microscope in order to see those. A lot of times this would involve looking at cells and tissues. Homeostasis is a term that refers to maintaining the body's internal environment. And so like I already mentioned earlier, the structure of body parts, so that would be the shapes or features, are closely associated with their function. And so a body part's function will depend on how it is constructed. For example, the human hand is composed of long jointed fingers that makes it easy to grasp objects. So here we have an image of the skeletal structure of the hand, and we can see that we have joints. So in this area right here, and so in those joints, you are able to bend those two structures. And then of course we have the opposable thumb right here. And the opposable thumb, along with the structure of the hand, enables us to grasp objects such as this. And with our thumb, we are able to precisely grip an object like so. So if you imagine your hand without your thumb and you're trying to precisely grip an object, it would be a little bit awkward and it would be hard to do. Our next section would be levels of organization. And we start with the atoms. Chemistry is an all-encompassing section of science or sector of science because really it is at the very heart of life science. So if you put atoms together, you end up creating an organism along with everything else that you see around you. In terms of atoms, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen make up 96.5% of an organism's weight. And one way to remember these elements would be CHON, so carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Oxygen is mostly present as water, and water has a critical role in an organism, and that would be in metabolism and respiration. So that would be digesting food and then trying to release energy from it. It is also found in organic molecules such as protein, carbohydrates, fats, and nucleic acid. Carbon is the backbone of many organic molecules. And so humans are organic molecules because we are composed of carbon. Hydrogen is also present in the form of water. And nitrogen, about 3% of the human body, it is found in amino acids, nucleic acids such as RNA and DNA, and then ATP. Other elements will include potassium, phosphorus, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, calcium, and magnesium, which would be about 3% of an organism's weight. Calcium is associated with bones and teeth. Phosphorus would be with phospholipid, so when we think of the phospholipid bilayer, that would be the membrane surrounding a cell. We have ATP, which is energy, and then nucleic acid. Sulfur is associated with keratin, so you're thinking of skin and hair. Sodium has to do with movement of water. So one of the reasons why sodium is very important to maintain in our body is because it allows for the proper movement of water in and out of the cell. And it also maintains osmotic pressure. And then chlorine has to do with the pH of the blood, as well as formation of tendons, teeth, and bones. And then magnesium has to do with the proper function of enzymes. And so if you think back in biology, enzymes enable things to get done in the human body in a faster rate. Other elements will include what we call trace elements. So that would be titanium, cesium, lead, mercury, arsenic, and cadmium, along with iron, fluorine, and zinc. And so the less toxic trace elements would be iron, fluorine, and zinc. The rest of the elements mentioned, we know them as toxic. Iron is important in transporting oxygen in the blood, and it is important to understand that for the trace elements and really the other elements mentioned, there has to be a balance. And if you have more or less, then that would mean harm to the body. Here's an image in your textbook, and it just shows a pictograph of the abundance of the elements in the human body. So again, oxygen being the most abundant, followed by carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and then the trace elements. If you put atoms together, you end up creating molecules. And water is one of the most important molecules found in our body, and it has a lot of function. And so we have regulating body temperature, moving chemicals, flushing toxins, digestion, absorption, and then lubricating joints. And then the other important molecule would be DNA, which carries genetic information. Hemoglobin would be a supersized macromolecule that transports oxygen. It is found in our blood. ATP has to do with energy. And I guess just to backtrack a little, if you put the molecules together, you end up creating the cell.